So let's link up with our senior parliamentary reporter, Patrick Amimo, just to tell us what we need to expect from that visit by the president. Patrick Amimo, kindly talk to us.
Thank you. The president is expected here anytime soon to meet boda operators. You know, the country has been rife with the talk of the hustler movement, where we've seen the deputy president meet bodas, hawkers, mama mbogas, and see that in an effort to uplift their living standards and ensure that they have at least a decent livelihood. So this time around, we're seeing is the president maybe take this particular initiative on board as part of the Jubilee administration by meeting these boda operators. And here it is the Boda Safety Association of Kenya, whose officials will be signing a partnership with the Capital Markets Authority, the Rubies, which is an oil distribution company, and also some organizations that will offer loans. So I think this particular arrangement, these bodas will also have an opportunity to get cheap loans from banks, where they can now buy their motorcycles. They can also maybe negotiate on maybe some of those softer deals with oil farms, especially these Rubies, which changed. That was a company, Keno, Kobil, and which became Rubies, maybe to see that they get fuel at least some manageable prices. So this is an event that we are waiting to see how it will go on. Remember, as it were, it's something that has been being popularized by the deputy president, meeting bodas as a hustler movement, but now we see the president taking a keen interest in this particular matter. And here at Pumwani, we've seen already crowds are already gathered, waiting the president's arrival, and I can see even the security is also tight. And I can also see some people here, a group already donning T-shirts of BBI, a document that was launched in Kisii just recently. I don't know where they got these T-shirts from, but when you see them donning them, it means maybe it will also have it will be an opportunity. They might want to hear from the leaders on what BBI is all about. Remember, the document is still in soft copy. We haven't had an opportunity to have hard copies that can be distributed to wananchi. And if it's done, then it should be in a language that these wananchi can understand, probably Kiswahili, and if possible also translated in some dialect so that they can understand what this BBI is all about. Because also, something that has really attracted attention is that sharing of power at the executive level, where you have an expanded executive. But then there are some sweeteners in the BBI, where touching on the youth, touching on women, some areas touching on the small and medium enterprise people, where they are told that they can get softer loans, and also taxation measures. So it's something that document probably the wananchi here might be also keen to listen from the president. And if we go by what we saw in Kisumu yesterday, where they were addressing rallies and crowds, then we expect also the head of state to pass a word or two to these members of the public gathered here. But strange enough, also, these people are not donning any face masks. So I expect the president, when he also will be addressing them, he should pass that message: wear face masks, wash your hands, keep social distance. That is, as it were, if we have really to manage this corona pandemic, even as we go the BBI regular way.
In fact, Amimo, it's good that you've... it's good that you've touched on that COVID-19 containment measures, because I was about to ask you that. And, you know, this week, last week actually, and the better part of this week, we've seen the CS for Health, Mutahi Kagwe, saying that if the cases of COVID-19 rise, political leaders will have to take the blame at the end of the day. And what I'm seeing, you know, at the background where you are at the Pumwani Social Hall, there's no social distance. So how is this going to happen with the function that the president is expected to attend?
It is a message that is yet to sink. And remember, when the Minister of Health took up the matter of COVID, when I tracked way back in March, they first of all instilled fear in the public, and that made the communication strategy flop. Then when there were these reports about the COVID millionaires, then the public thought maybe they are being duped, and is an opportunity for some honchos in government and the private sector to make money out of this particular pandemic. So it's something that needs to be reversed and the narrative changed so that people know that there is really COVID in place and they have to take seriously those regulations by the Ministry of Health, where they have to ensure there's social distancing, they wash their hands, or if in case there's no water, then they get sanitizers, and also ensure that they put on face masks. And maybe it should be a challenge to the government to ensure that there was a time we were told about Kitui textile factory maybe producing face masks. I don't know what became of that particular initiative, because by now maybe we should be having enough face masks for distribution to these wananchi. There was a talk about those sanitizers, the ethanol that was confiscated, and it was said it be converted into sanitizers. I don't know what became of it, whether they are still distributing it or not, but it is a message that must sink to the public as we see the numbers rising, and maybe ensuring that maybe sending fear that there might be a second wave, which as those experts in medical say, then it might be very, very serious, especially the second wave, if stories in Europe and the rest of the world are to go by. Yes, Brenda?
All right, Amimo, and finally, it's good you also mentioned a bit of some, political undertones when it comes to the BBI. Probably the president might touch on that. Do you think he will touch also on, being a senior parliamentary reporter, do you think he will also touch on some of the concern that women parliamentarians have raised on the fact that at least the BBI report talks about how the two-thirds gender rule will be achieved in the Senate, but it's so silent on how the two-thirds gender will be achieved in Parliament, actually at the National Assembly?
That matter of the gender parity has been a really struggle in the National Assembly, both in the 11th and 12th Parliament. For 6 consecutive times, an attempt to pass that gender parity law, both at the National Assembly and Senate, flopped. And remember, it's these legislators who are trying to pass this particular law. And we have also an advisory from the Chief Justice asking the President to dissolve Parliament. We are yet to see the ruling from the judges that have been appointed by the Deputy Chief Justice to look into that particular matter of dissolving Parliament. But then, from this particular BBI, probably they're looking at a matter of that mixed proportional representation. It is something that was in the Bomas draft, where they thought it would cure that gender parity law, because we've seen now them do away with nomination slots, and instead set aside some 70 slots through the MPP procedure, where probably these it might benefit the female gender. And also political parties have been asked to ensure that during the nomination process they encourage as many women as possible to come on board, and also that the political funding will depend on how the gender principle has been adopted by political parties. So maybe those are some of the things that they want to include into law to ensure that political parties adhere to this particular principle. But as it were, the test of the pudding is in the eating. And the problem we have in the country is on lack of political will to implement some of these beautiful policies and or laws in place because of that lack of political will. So the leaders also have to shape up and ensure that the laws that are passed are implemented so that they benefit wananchi and the greater nation at large, so that we live through those utilitarian principles.
All right, and finally, Amimo, as we wind up, the border sector has been an attractive sector to politicians, especially Deputy President William Ruto. You saw what happened in Kisii. His major tour there was to meet the border sector. We are seeing the same thing today with the president. Why is this sector attracting a lot of political attention, and especially during this time of the BBI?
The informal sector, as it were, even looking at the record, they say that it's one of the major employers of these idle labor in the country. And with the country struggling with unemployment at the rate of 35%, then these informal sectors, especially the borders, become a good avenue where politicians can meet these particular people and also try to convince them. The Juakali sector, it's something that successive governments have wanted to improve, because that is where most of the people people eke out a living. But even as you look at the boda, the phenomenon that has come up with it, there are also safety concerns. There are major accidents are caused by boda operators. So I even expect, as the president attends this particular function and talks to the bodas, because most of them lying there are chairman of this particular association, I expect he'll also stress to them on the need to observe traffic regulations and ensure safety on our roads, because surely looking at the way boda operates in this town and any other urban settlement, then it means it leaves much to desire, and that road safety message must also be instilled on these people as they meet the president, and that word should come from the head of state. Brenda?
All right, our senior parliamentary reporter Patrick Amimo at the Pumwani Social Hall, where President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to make his way right there. As you can see, crowds of Kenyans eagerly waiting for the president. But of concern, as you know, as Patrick Amimo has told us, is that safety measures, the containment measures of COVID-19 that have been put in place. We had from the CS of Health, Mutahi Kagwe, talking about political leaders taking that blame should the numbers of COVID-19 continue rising here in the country. So we wait and see what he will have to say about today's meeting. But then that brings us to the